Welcome back to Noir Alley here at Bar 355 in Oakland, California. I'm Eddie Muller, and today I've got a film for you that may feel like a paint-by-numbers picture, filled with characters and scenes from the last 60 years of movies about organized crime. It's New York Confidential, an independently produced feature distributed by Warner Brothers in 1955. Remember that back then, none of what you're about to see was familiar to movie audiences. How organized crime actually worked was still being uncovered through investigative reporting and congressional hearings. It'd be years before a genuinely nuanced portrait of such criminals would be made. Today, you're seeing the broad stroke outlines of later American touchstones like The Godfather and The Sopranos. For the past few decades, the word confidential has been attached to all sorts of movies and books. Art School Confidential, Kitchen Confidential, LA Confidential. Even I did it with my book Tab Hunter Confidential. It all began in 1948 when Jack Late and Lee Mortimer, reporters for the New York Mirror, compiled what was essentially a travel guide to the pulpiest parts of the Big Apple. New York Confidential was a bestseller, and a big part of its success was that it played both sides of the street. It had a veneer of outrage that such sordid practices were rife in our society, but it also gave the names and addresses of the people and places that offered curious citizens a walk on the wild side. It led to a whole series, Chicago Confidential, Washington Confidential, culminating in their magnum opus, USA Confidential. For savvy readers, the tone of these books was like Captain Renault's line in Casablanca, "I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here," delivered as he scoops up his winnings. In 1953, producer Edward Small bought the rights to New York Confidential. Not coincidentally, the previous year, he'd scored a success with the crafty heist picture Kansas City Confidential, which had absolutely nothing to do with the books by Jack Late and Lee Mortimer. Small was just capitalizing on their success, as you'll see in the title sequence for this film. But Small was only interested in one part of the book, chapter 25, titled Hoodlum's Hierarchy. In it, the reporters laid out the family tree of the mafia, stretching back to the old country in Italy. You won't hear the word mafia used, however, because during the 1950s, Hollywood was cautious about backlash from Italian-American anti-defamation groups and from the FBI, since its director, J. Edgar Hoover, had long maintained that the mafia did not exist, despite Senator Estes Kefauver's congressional hearings that proved its existence. The denial of proven facts is nothing new in this country. The team of Clarence Green and Russell Rouse had a 6-picture deal with Eddie Small, and he entrusted them with creating a character-driven story that fleshed out the book's dossier-like depiction of crime. Initially, Small wanted Paul Muni and George Raft for the parts played by Broderick Crawford and Richard Conte. Good thing that didn't work out. Crawford and Conte work together well because they are complete opposites. Crawford splutters and rages like a bull in a china shop, while Conte offers an early iteration of stolid, stone-faced hitman, barely changing expressions. Between them, playing the boss's tempestuous daughter, is 24-year-old Bronx native Anne Bancroft, who livens things up every time she enters the frame. There's also a fairly large role for film noir favorite Mike Mazurki. As was typical of most Eddie Small productions, the challenge was to make something that felt hefty on a very light budget. For a film purportedly exposing the underworld in New York, most scenes take place in sparsely furnished homes and offices, but Rouse keeps things humming with flashes of directorial ingenuity, and he lets the actors do the rest. I figure Green and Rouse were dieting when they wrote this script, because the characters are constantly eating or talking about eating. Maybe everybody was fasting, or Eddie Small couldn't afford craft services. And if you're feeling drowsy or just waking up, I guarantee you won't nod off. not with Broderick Crawford bellowing lines faster than seems humanly possible. Here is one of the original mob movies, New York Confidential.